Imagine an arsonist hiring the local fire department to burn down a massive apartment building.
Right.
Just so they can split the insurance money,
Yeah.
And the fire chief gets to look like a hero on the evening news.
It's a dark analogy, but yeah.
But now I want you to scale that up. Imagine that building is full of sleeping civilians. The fire department is the American Central Intelligence Agency, and the arsonist orchestrating the blaze is a general who is about to become the president of Russia. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, the materials we're synthesizing today, they really require us to basically completely discard this illusion of a neat, well-lit geopolitical chessboard.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we are not looking at statecraft the way it's taught in universities here. We have this massive stack of highly classified operational debriefs, raw intercepted communications, and covert surveillance logs.
The real raw data.
Exactly. And it details this event known in intelligence circles as the November Man incident. It is just an incredibly granular look at the subterranean mechanics of global power.
Yeah, and when you read through these raw transcripts, it's wild because that grand architecture of global diplomacy you see on the news, the marble halls, the summit meetings, it all just vanishes.
It's gone.
Right. You realize you are looking at a fundamentally chaotic shadow war that is completely hidden from the public eye. So our mission today is to trace the impossible trajectory of these events.
And it really is an impossible trajectory.
It really is. We are going to untack how a single traumatized eyewitness, a young woman who was entirely discarded by the powerful men who abused her, how she managed to expose a terrifying conspiracy and essentially completely dismantle the political dynasty of Arkady Fedorov.
Well, to navigate these logs effectively, we really have to maintain a very specific analytical lens. On the surface, I mean, the source material reads like a kinetic tactical scenario, right?
An action movie or something.
Right, like assassinations, evasion protocols, intelligence tradecraft in European capitals. But the underlying theme of every single debrief we're going to examine is the absolute commodification of human lives.
Yeah, that's the part that really sticks with you.
It has to. We're looking at how intelligence architectures essentially quantify the value of a person. They reduce them to operational variables, and then we see the catastrophic systemic failure that happens when those variables just refuse to remain silent.
And I mean, that commodification of lives is heavily apparent from the very first page of these debriefs. To understand the geopolitical earthquake that happens at the end of this timeline, we have to look at the tremor that sets it all off,
Just extraction.
Exactly. We start in this highly volatile, snowy environment in Moscow. The operational logs detail a CIA extraction that goes irreversibly wrong. And it's all centered around a reactivated operative named Peter Devereaux.
Yeah, so the reactivation of Peter Devereaux is the catalyst for everything. According to his handler's notes, Devereaux had been effectively retired. He was just running a small cafe by a lake in Lausanne, Switzerland.
Which sounds lovely, honestly.
Right. But in the intelligence community, there's a distinct psychological profile for operators of his caliber. His agency moniker was the November Man.
Which is just such a chilling name.
It really is. And the transcripts explain the reasoning behind this designation. They called him that because after he passed through, nothing lived.
Wow.
Yeah. He represented the ultimate cold-blooded execution of agency will.
But his reactivation by his former handler, this guy John Hanley, it's highly irregular. Because the mission isn't a standard targeted action, Hanley tells Devereaux that a deep cover asset named Natalia has been compromised in Moscow.
And not just any asset.
Right. Natalia has actually managed to infiltrate the inner circle of Arkady Fedorov, who at this point is a massively powerful Russian politician, essentially clearing the runway to become the next president.
He's right on the precipice of total power.
Exactly. So Natalia needs immediate extraction, but she's instituted a hard condition. She will only come in from the cold if Peter Devereaux is the one to pull her out.
And her insistence on Devereaux, it really stems from the intelligence she's carrying. It's not like a heavily encrypted hard drive or some smuggled dossier.
No, it's so much simpler.
The world-ending intel she possesses is just a single name. And according to Hanley's briefing, this name is dangerous enough to alter the geopolitical landscape if it reaches the public. And Natalia is just terrified.
And we learn that name very quickly in the logs, but the actual mechanics of this extraction are a complete disaster. So Devereaux infiltrates Moscow. He sets up the logistical framework to get Natalia out. She's moving toward the rendezvous point. But the logs reveal this massive fatal complication.
The blind spot.
Right. Devereaux is operating entirely blind to the fact that a completely separate rival CIA team is operating in the exact same grid.
Yeah, and this is a classic example of bureaucratic siloing within intelligence architectures.
Yeah.
You have secondary team, and they're commanded by a senior CIA official named Weinstein.
Right.
And the lead operative on the ground, the guy managing the tactical overwatch for Weinstein's team, is a young man named David Mason.
Okay, and this is where it gets crazy. Let's unpack this interpersonal dynamic because it's the core of the tragedy here. David Mason isn't just another operator. He was extensively trained by Peter Devereaux.
Yeah, Mason is Devereaux's protege.
And their operational paths just violently collide. Natalia's cover is blown by the Russian FSB, which turns this quiet extraction into a frantic foot chase through the streets of Moscow.
It's pure chaos.
Total chaos.
Mhm.
Devereaux is desperately trying to reach her position, but Mason's team intercepts the pursuit first. Mason is sitting in a sniper overwatch position, and he receives a direct order from Weinstein's control room to take a shot.
But the order isn't to take out the FSB agents.
No! The order is to eliminate Natalia. And Mason complies. He pulls the trigger, killing his own agency's deep cover asset.
It's brutal.
And Devereaux arrives just seconds too late. He reaches Natalia only in time to hold her as she bleeds out, and to hear her whisper that world-ending name.
Mira Filipova.
Mira Filipova, exactly.
So the fallout from that single ballistic event, it just fractures the entire operational landscape. You have the loss of an irreplaceable asset, you sever direct intelligence access to Fedorov, and crucially, you cause the immediate radicalization of Peter Devereaux.
He just snaps.
Instantly.
Yeah.
He shifts from this cooperative reactivated asset to a highly lethal rogue agent. He actually violently neutralizes several members of Mason's support team in his escape from Moscow.
Okay, I have to challenge the tactical doctrine at play here because, looking at Mason's decision to pull the trigger, it seems like a massive systemic failure.
In what way?
Well, if Mason was trained by Devereaux, and if he understands the immense difficulty and the value of placing an asset that close to a future world leader, why does he execute her without hesitation? If you train operators to have zero analytical independence, to just be unthinking, blunt instruments, aren't you intentionally creating liabilities who can't read the context of a situation? Is the CIA's training inherently flawed here?
So that is the pivotal question regarding intelligence tradecraft. And the psychological profile of David Mason in these logs, it provides the answer. The agency does not view that lack of analytical independence as a flaw.
Really?
No, they view it as an essential statistical trade-off. The doctrine demands absolute unfeeling compliance. They utilize trauma-based compartmentalization to neurologically suppress the operator's empathy and independent judgment.
Wow, neurologically suppress it.
Exactly. The goal is to create a sterile execution of orders. So when Mason receives the command from Weinstein, he is not evaluating the geopolitical value of her asset. The command structure has determined the asset is compromised and must be neutralized to protect broader agency secrets. Mason is simply the algorithmic response to that determination.
But that sterile execution completely ignores the chaotic reality of human relationships, because the massive secret buried in these logs is that Devereaux, the guy characterized by winter and death, the ultimate blunt instrument, he actually possessed a massive emotional tether.
Right, the hidden variable.
Yeah. Devereaux and Natalia weren't just a handler and an asset. Years prior, when they were stationed in Berlin, they fell in love. They had a child together, a daughter named Lucy, who is now 12 years old. Devereaux had managed the incredible feat of hiding an entire family from the CIA's surveillance apparatus.
And that hidden human element, it recontextualizes the entire Moscow operation. When Mason executes that algorithmic response, he believes he's simply severing a compromised operational node. He has absolutely no comprehension that he has just murdered the mother of his mentor's child.
Just horrible.
So the agency's rigid insistence on blind obedience, it didn't contain a problem. It unleashed their most dangerous former operator and directed his wrath squarely at their own infrastructure.
And the narrative geography of these logs shifts dramatically at this point. The botched extraction in Moscow becomes the catalyst for a much wider manhunt. Devereaux is now driven by an intensely personal motive. He needs to uncover the architecture of the conspiracy that killed Natalia, which means he has to find the person attached to the name she whispered.
Mira Filipova.
Right, and this search pulls all the disparate factions away from Russia and drops them into the highly complex, multi-layered environment of Belgrade, Serbia.
Yeah, the intelligence logs detail how the search for Mira points everyone toward a woman named Alice Fournier. Background checks establish Alice as a dedicated social worker operating in Belgrade, and she's specifically focused on aiding young female refugees who survived the extreme violence of the Chechen conflict.
And the undercurrent driving this entire shadow war is the Chechen conflict. Arkady Fedorov was a commanding general during that war, and his brutal, scorched earth tactics are a matter of historical record.
Very much so.
So Alice Fournier's proximity to the survivors of his campaigns makes her a highly visible node in the search for Mira Filipova. And Devereaux and the CIA aren't the only ones tracking her. The sources introduce a critical civilian perspective here through Edgar Simpson.
Right, the investigative journalist for the New York Times. And Simpson's presence in the logs is vital because he represents the attempt to drag these subterranean mechanics into the public light. He's in Belgrade conducting deep background research, attempting to assemble a comprehensive dossier of Fedorov's war crimes to derail his ascension to the presidency.
But he's so cynical about it.
Very. Simpson's interview transcripts reveal this deeply entrenched cynicism regarding the public's media consumption. He actually notes atrocities are like reality TV. There's always some new show for people to forget.
That is just such a bleak assessment of compassion fatigue. He understands that a 24-hour news cycle commodifies trauma. It makes it nearly impossible to sustain public outrage, yet, he's still trying. Simpson secures a meeting with Alice Fournier at this busy restaurant in Belgrade,
hoping to convince her to help refugee women testify against Fedorov.
Right, but Alice is heavily resistant. She accuses him of exploiting their trauma for a headline and potentially putting vulnerable survivors in the crosshairs of Russian intelligence.
And her threat assessment is entirely accurate. I mean, while they sit in that restaurant debating the ethics of journalistic intervention, a massive, multifactional covert operation is tightening a net around the building.
The convergence at this restaurant is one of the most tense sequences in the entire stack of logs. Think about this. You have Edgar Simpson, armed with nothing but a notepad. You have a highly elite, terrifyingly efficient Russian contract killer named Alexa, dispatched directly by Fedorov's inner circle to eliminate any link to Mira. And you have David Mason commanding a heavily armed CIA strike team aiming to secure Alice for Weinstein.
It is a complete tactical powder keg.
It's insane. And the variable that detonates it is Peter Devereaux. Utilizing decades of field experience, Devereaux intercepts the operation. He anticipates the Russian assassin's vector, he neutralizes the immediate kinetic threat to Alice, and he manages to extract her right through the perimeter of Mason's CIA team.
Just slicing right through them.
Yeah. The extraction forces Devereaux and Alice to go on the run. But what follows isn't just a physical evasion, it's a masterclass in digital and psychological warfare. Devereaux knows Mason possesses the full weight of the CIA's signal intelligence apparatus.
Right.
So Devereaux doesn't just hide. He actively manipulates their surveillance architecture. The logs show him hacking a burner cell phone to spoof his physical location, tricking Mason's electronic scanners into believing Devereaux is standing right next to Mason's tactical units.
The technical tradecraft here is definitely worth examining, because to understand how a single operative ghosts a fully funded surveillance net, we have to look at the vulnerabilities of cellular networks.
Right. How does he actually do this?
Well, when a device connects to a cell tower, it performs a digital handshake. It provides its International Mobile Subscriber Identity, or MSI. Intelligence agencies utilize devices known as MSI catchers, or stingrays.
I've heard of stingrays, yeah.
Yeah, they mimic legitimate towers and force nearby phones to connect to them. But Devereaux executes a counterspoof. He manipulates the baseband processor of a device to broadcast a cloned signature, establishing a ghost signal.
Wow.
And he leaves this phantom signature in a static location, basically forcing Mason's multi-million-dollar technology to chase a digital illusion.
And while Mason's team is chasing that phantom, Devereaux initiates direct communication over their tactical radio frequency. He isn't just taunting his former protege, he is dismantling him psychologically.
He's picking him apart.
Completely. He reminds Mason of his past failures. He whispers over the open comms, "Fear is the enemy, you taught me that." And Devereaux replies, "Yeah, well, I haven't finished teaching you yet, son."
It's so dismissive.
He openly mocks Mason's reliance on a control room to dictate his actions, humiliating him in front of his entire tactical unit.
And this psychological dominance eventually manifests in physical dominance. During the chaotic evasion through the city, Devereaux successfully flanks Mason's position. The logs detail this moment where Devereaux has Mason completely exposed. The young operative is dead to rights in Devereaux's sights.
Okay, and this is where I really have to push back on Devereaux's logic. Because tactically, this decision seems absurd.
Oh,
Yeah, Devereaux is supposedly the ultimate cold-blooded professional. He has the man who murdered the mother of his child in his crosshairs. Mason is a highly trained, relentless threat who will not stop hunting him. Letting Mason live isn't a profound teaching moment. It is a massive operational liability. Why doesn't he take the shot? Is this whole deprogramming concept just a convenient excuse for an aging operative losing his edge?
it's a fair question, but if we analyze the objective of the November Man, the logic actually becomes clear. If Devereaux simply executes Mason kinetically, the CIA will instantly replace him with another algorithmic blunt instrument.
Because they have an endless supply of them.
Exactly. The agency possesses an endless supply. Devereaux is not losing his edge. He is transitioning from kinetic warfare to psychological sabotage. He is actively trying to deprogram the weapon the CIA created.
By forcing him to confront his own actions.
Yes. Later in the transcripts, Devereaux explicitly states his operational philosophy to Mason. He tells him, you can be a human or a killer of humans, but not both. Eventually, one of those people will extinguish the other one.
That's heavy.
It is. By sparing Mason's life when tactical protocol demanded execution, Devereaux introduces a profound variable of humanity into Mason's rigid, unthinking world. He forces Mason to experience a reality where a choice exists outside the parameters of a control room's orders.
Put yourself in Mason's shoes for a moment. I mean, imagine the immense moral injury of a career built entirely on state-sanctioned violence. How do you go home, as Devereaux asks him, look at a beautiful woman or a child, and not have the weight of all the lives you have ended crush you?
You really can't. Mason tries to deflect it, claiming he doesn't care about the targets he has eliminated. But Devereaux knows the human psyche cannot permanently sustain that level of cognitive dissonance. The compartmentalization always fractures eventually.
So Devereaux is essentially planting a psychological virus in Mason's conditioning.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It takes the visceral reality of a sniper in a high vantage point and grounds it in a profound study of moral injury.
It is brilliant, but, it doesn't solve their immediate logistical problem. Devereaux and Alice Fournier are still being hunted by both Russian assassins and the CIA. To survive, they need leverage. They need to understand the exact nature of the secret Mira Filipova possesses that has mobilized two global superpowers to bury it.
And acquiring that leverage requires Devereaux to directly infiltrate the inner circle of the enemy.
Yeah.
This strategic pivot, it shifts the narrative from a localized evasion in Belgrade into a revelation that entirely reframes the geopolitical history presented in these sources.
Because Devereaux tracks down a man named Simeon Denisov. During the brutal Chechen campaigns, Denisov served as Arkady Fedorov's right-hand man. He managed the darkest off-the-books operations for the general.
Right. And currently, Denisov is operating an illicit human trafficking ring out of a heavily fortified club in Belgrade.
So Devereaux breaches the security perimeter and subjects Denisov to a violent, highly targeted interrogation, and the extraction of intelligence from Denisov reveals the foundational sin of Fedorov's political empire.
It's horrifying.
It really is. He details a catastrophic event from 1999, the bombing of a Russian civilian apartment building.
And this is where the sheer scale of the manipulation becomes terrifying. Denisov confirms that innocent families and children were slaughtered in their sleep. The Russian government immediately attributed the atrocity to Chechen terrorists.
Which started the war.
Exactly. The resulting public hysteria and outrage served as the direct catalyst for launching the Second Chechen War, and the human cost of that military campaign was staggering.
But the interrogation logs reveal that the conflict was never fundamentally about national security or counterterrorism. The hidden engine driving the war was resource acquisition, specifically the control of vast oil reserves.
Yeah, Denisov lays it out with absolute sociopathic clarity. He says, filthy Chechen terrorists didn't want to give it to us, so one day a building blew up, and just like that, Fedorov got his dirty little war, and Mother Russia got its oil.
And the war allowed the military to seize the resources. It simultaneously transformed General Fedorov into a national hero. He rode a manufactured wave of patriotism straight toward the presidency.
And the mechanism described here is a classic false flag operation. A state actor orchestrates an attack on its own populace and attributes it to a designated enemy to manufacture consent for a pre-planned military action.
Because the public naturally resists war.
Right. The public resists the economic and human toll of war. So to override that inherent resistance, a leader must create a visceral existential threat. Abstract arguments about oil reserves will not mobilize a nation, but the televised destruction of an apartment building will.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because the logistics of this specific false flag present a massive problem.
Oh.
And this is where the American intelligence apparatus enters the picture. Think about my arsonist analogy from the beginning. General Fedorov couldn't realistically utilize his own Russian soldiers to bomb a Russian building and expect the secret to hold.
No, the risk of a leak is too high.
Right. A leak would result in his execution for high treason. It was an unacceptable variable. He required an operator with zero ties to the Russian military, no moral reservations about slaughtering Russian civilians, and the absolute operational silence of a ghost.
And according to the debriefs, Fedorov outsourced this mass murder. He utilized an American intelligence operative. A CIA agent orchestrated the logistics, dropped the civilian building, and the agency essentially observed as the resulting war consolidated Fedorov's power.
Okay, we have to pause and analyze the strategic logic here, because on the surface, this defies traditional national security doctrine. Why would the American Central Intelligence Agency provide operational support to help a hostile foreign general start a war and seize oil? Why actively strengthen a rival superpower? It seems completely counterintuitive.
Well, it appears counterintuitive only if we view statecraft as a straightforward conflict between rival nations. But the logs expose a much more cynical framework. This was not a favor. It was a highly calculated, long-term geopolitical investment.
How so?
By executing the bombing, and more importantly, by possessing the undeniable proof of Fedorov's treason, the CIA effectively acquired a controlling interest in his future.
Okay, so it's the geopolitical equivalent of a massive tech monopoly quietly buying up the toxic debt of a hostile startup.
Yes.
They don't acquire the debt to bankrupt the startup. They hold it so that 10 years later, when that startup becomes a globally profitable entity, they can call in the debt and legally force a hostile takeover.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. The CIA wasn't fighting a shadow war. They were manufacturing a Manchurian candidate. If you hold the singular secret that could cause a world leader to be executed by his own populace, you effectively command that leader's foreign policy.
It is the ultimate weaponization of blackmail. And it forces Devereaux to pivot his investigation from the what to the who. He understands the mechanics of the 1999 bombing, but he must identify which specific CIA operative possessed the sociopathy required to execute it.
Right, because that unmasking brings the existential threat directly into Devereaux's personal life. Through his network of contacts, Devereaux finally confirms the identity of the American architect behind the false flag. And it wasn't some nameless bureaucrat.
No.
It was John Hanley, his former handler, the very man who reactivated him from retirement.
And the betrayal here, it operates on multiple levels. It suddenly clarifies the anomalies of the Moscow extraction.
Wow.
Hanley had no intention of saving Natalia.
He just used her.
Completely. He utilized Devereaux's emotional connection to Natalia to flesh out Mira Filipova, so Hanley could eliminate the only living eyewitness to his conspiracy with Fedorov.
Because if Mira's testimony reaches the public, Hanley's decades-long investment collapses, and the sources detail the staggering scope of Hanley's ambition. He hasn't just manipulated Russian politics, he has orchestrated a massive internal coup within the CIA. Hanley has successfully outmaneuvered and ousted his superior, Weinstein, seizing total control of the European operations desk.
And in a chilling, intercepted monologue, Hanley explicitly details his grand strategy for the Russian presidency. He intends to leverage the blackmail to force Fedorov's Russia to join NATO.
Which is wild.
It is. His stated objective is to unite the civilized world against the Middle East. He is attempting to engineer a massive unified global conflict, a permanent state of war that he deems essential for the maintenance of Western hegemony.
But I look at Hanley's philosophy. There's a specific transcript where he says, knowledge isn't power, people are power. We collect people. And I have to question the strategic viability of his worldview. Because Hanley views himself as a geopolitical grandmaster. He believes he is playing multidimensional chess. But his entire master plan relies on kidnapping a 12-year-old girl and hunting down a traumatized teenager.
Right.
I mean, Hanley actually thinks he's the good guy here, doesn't he? He believes manipulating global superpowers justifies relying on such fragile, volatile human elements. It just seems like monumental strategic hubris, doesn't it?
It is the defining hubris of macro-level strategic planning. When an architect of intelligence operates in an environment where success is quantified entirely by abstract metrics, resource control, regime alignment, territorial influence, the human cost becomes nothing more than a statistical variable on a spreadsheet.
Just numbers.
Just numbers. Hanley's failure is his inability to recognize that human beings resist commodification. He does not view Devereaux's daughter or Mira Filipova as dynamic threats. He views them as inanimate chess pieces to be moved or discarded. He believes absolute power grants absolute immunity from consequence.
And he leverages that perceived power brutally. Hanley dispatches an operational team to Lausanne, utilizing David Mason to physically kidnap Devereaux's daughter Lucy from her boarding school. He forces a standoff, offering Lucy's life in exchange for Mira Filipova's location.
And it is during this extreme operational pressure that the logs reveal the most profound identity shift in the narrative.
This part blew my mind.
Yeah. Devereaux, desperate to construct a trade for his daughter, turns to Alice Fournier, the social worker who has been aiding his evasion, and realizes the fundamental truth of her existence.
This revelation completely upends the dynamic. Alice Fournier cannot tell him where Mira Filipova is hiding because the real Alice Fournier died years ago of cancer. The woman standing in front of him is Mira Filipova.
The psychological resilience required to execute that deception is extraordinary. Mira did not simply survive the trauma. She adapted to it by completely discarding her former identity and seamlessly integrating into a new one.
And the background debriefs on Mira are harrowing. She wasn't an uneducated peasant or a mute, which was the narrative Fedorov propagated to his inner circle. Her parents were university academics. When she was merely 15 years old, Fedorov's forces murdered her family. She was taken captive and subjected to severe, sustained abuse by Fedorov for 2 years.
Unimaginable.
And during that captivity, she utilized an incredible survival mechanism. She feigned absolute muteness and a total lack of comprehension of both Russian and English.
Yeah, she rendered herself invisible to her captors. By acting as a completely non-threatening, uncomprehending object, she became the ultimate fly on the wall. She was present in the room when Fedorov and Hanley laid out the logistical framework for the 1999 Harriman bombings.
The men engineering the slaughter of thousands completely ignored the traumatized teenager in the corner. They assumed their power rendered her insignificant, but she absorbed every detail. And when she eventually escaped, she weaponized her trauma.
She assumed Alice's identity and returned to the epicenter of the conflict.
Utilizing her position as a social worker to aid other victims, all while carrying the singular piece of intelligence capable of dismantling an empire.
It is a profound demonstration of asymmetric warfare. I mean, the architects of the Shadow War possessed satellites, strike teams, limitless funding, but their entire architecture was vulnerable to the memory of a single survivor they failed to account for.
And this brings all the disparate elements into a final chaotic convergence in Belgrade. The operational board is set. Hanley is holding Lucy hostage. Devereaux is mobilizing to breach the holding facility. Fedorov is in the city attending a highly publicized European energy conference, completely insulated by heavy security, unaware his past has caught up to him.
And Mira holds the ultimate evidentiary leverage.
The sequence that follows demonstrates exactly how to weaponize an enemy's hubris against them.
Because Mira understands that attempting to expose the conspiracy through traditional channels, it would just be intercepted by Hanley's network. She requires undeniable primary source verification, and she recognizes that Fedorov's arrogance and predatory nature are his primary vulnerabilities.
He cannot conceive of a scenario where a former victim would willingly return to his proximity unless she was entirely broken.
Exactly. She utilizes that blind spot perfectly. Mira stops evading. She walks directly into the Hotel Imperial, where Fedorov is heavily guarded. She leverages her knowledge of Denisov's human trafficking operation, presenting herself to the security perimeter as a quote-unquote gift dispatched for the general's entertainment.
And because Fedorov views human beings purely as disposable commodities, his security apparatus permits her direct access to his sweep.
And you have to think about the psychological terror of willingly stepping back into the exact physical dynamic of her previous abuse. It cannot be overstated, but she enters the environment fundamentally transformed.
Right.
She is no longer the terrified captive. She is the operative in control.
Right, because the moment Fedorov recognizes her, his arrogance remains intact. He assumes he still dictates the power dynamic. But Mira is equipped with a concealed recording device, and she doesn't seek the simple kinetic resolution of an assassination. A bullet would leave the broader conspiracy intact.
Right. She needs the proof.
She engages him physically, securing his own weapon, and holds him at gunpoint. She demands the precise operational details. And under the threat of immediate execution, Fedorov confesses on camera that John Hanley was the American architect of the 1999 bombings.
And the acquisition of that audiovisual file, it fundamentally breaks the operational stalemate. It shifts the leverage entirely. And its immediate impact is not just geopolitical. It catalyzes the psychological break Devereaux had been engineering within David Mason.
Because Mira ensures the footage is transmitted to Mason's secure communications network. Mason, who has been executing Hanley's orders, who facilitated the kidnapping of a child under the guise of national security, is suddenly confronted with the raw, undeniable proof of his commander's treason.
He witnesses Hanley's complicity in the mass murder of civilians to manipulate a foreign election.
This is the culmination of Devereaux's deprogramming strategy. Mason is forced to reconcile the agency's demand for blind obedience with the monstrous reality of the lie he is serving. The compartmentalization shatters. The voice of his mentor, offering the choice to be a human or a killer of humans, finally overrides the algorithmic protocols of his training.
And Mason chooses humanity. He breaks his operational conditioning, he turns his weapon on Hanley's loyalists, and he actively aligns with Devereaux to execute the rescue of Lucy at the Belgrade train station.
And the logs detailing the train station breach strip away any cinematic romanticism regarding kinetic engagements. It is an environment dictated entirely by lethal physics.
Very much so.
Earlier in the transcripts, Devereaux explains the reality of this violence to Mason. We are talking about supersonic ballistics here. A standard high-velocity rifle round travels at over 4,000 feet per second. That is roughly 4 times the speed of sound.
It's terrifying.
The shockwave precedes the projectile. The human brain processes auditory stimuli slower than the bullet impacts the tissue. You do not hear the shot that kills you. You don't have a moment of profound realization. As the debrief bluntly states, you simply cease to exist.
And operating in an environment where non-existence is measured in fractions of a second requires a specific psychological toll. But Mason and Devereaux successfully navigate the terminal ballistics of the train station. They neutralize the hostile elements and secure Lucy.
So what does this all mean? The reunion of Devereaux and his daughter is the singular moment of genuine human connection in an otherwise entirely bleak operational landscape. But the strategic victory belongs entirely to Mira Filipova. Having extracted the confession, she evades Fedorov's compromised security and executes Devereaux's contingency protocol, releasing the raw, unedited testimony directly to the global press syndicate.
And the velocity of that truth fundamentally shatters the geopolitical architecture. The undeniable evidence of a conspiracy between a Russian presidential frontrunner and a rogue CIA director. It completely bypasses the traditional filters of intelligence cover-ups.
The fallout is instantaneous. The logs note that the Russian Energy Ministry immediately issues a blank denial to distance the state from the scandal. Arkady Fedorov is forced into an extended leave from his political duties. His carefully manufactured dynasty, built on the bodies of innocent civilians, collapses overnight.
It really represents the ultimate structural irony. Architects of power like John Hanley and Arkady Fedorov dedicate their existence to playing a macro game of geopolitical dominance. They manipulate borders, command intelligence networks, they trade in the currency of entire nations.
Right.
Yet they are utterly defeated in a micro game of personal accountability. They failed to calculate that their immense, terrifying power was fundamentally fragile. It was entirely dependent on the assumption that their victims would remain silent.
And that is the absolute core takeaway of this deep dive. Whether you are analyzing a botched extraction in a snowy Moscow courtyard or a frantic digital evasion in Belgrade, the ultimate currency of power isn't oil, and it isn't supersonic ballistics. It is the truth.
Yeah.
And a single traumatized voice speaking the truth at precisely the right moment possesses the kinetic energy to shatter empires.
It serves as a stark reminder that regardless of the sophistication of the surveillance apparatus or the depth at which secrets are buried, the human element remains the most volatile variable. Systems of power demand unfeeling compliance. But as demonstrated by both David Mason and Mira Filipova, fundamental humanity has a persistent, undeniable habit of breaking through the programming.
It truly does. As we conclude our analysis of these debriefs, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final framework for viewing the world around you. We have spent this session meticulously examining how intelligence agencies can ghost cellular networks, how state actors orchestrate the slaughter of their own citizens to manufacture consent, and how entirely rogue factions can operate seamlessly within the architecture of global power.
We've seen the mechanics of the shadow war.
Exactly, but think back to Edgar Simpson.
The investigative journalist sitting in that Belgrade cafe.
Yes. Think about his cynical observation that the public treats global atrocities like disposable reality television. If this staggering level of manipulation, this deeply entrenched, highly funded shadow war, represents the actual mechanical reality operating just beneath the surface of global events, how much of the daily news you consume is merely the carefully managed ripple effect of these covert operations?
It's a haunting thought.
How many breaking headlines are simply the sanitized, authorized results of a brutal battle fought entirely in the dark? And perhaps most importantly, how many Miras are out there right now? Survivors holding on to world-changing, terrifying truths, whose voices never make it past the institutional cover-ups and the engineered noise of the 24-hour news cycle. Keep that operational reality in mind the next time you read a headline and assume you are being presented with the complete narrative. The grand, well-lit architecture of diplomacy might just be a facade constructed to hide the shadow war operating underneath.
A necessary and highly provocative analytical lens through which to view our modern geopolitical reality.
Thank you for joining us on this incredibly intense deep dive into the source material. Keep questioning the established narratives, keep looking for the mechanical truth hidden in the shadows, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.